I'm reading a book called Presidents of War by Michael Beschloss, who's one of my favorite historians. And it has a fascinating information about Dean Achison, who was Undersecretary of State during the Roosevelt administration, the third and fourth term, and was Secretary of State under the Truman administration. And the history really uncovers that this guy single-handedly caused Pearl Harbor and the Korean War. Let me tell you the story. Roosevelt was reacting badly and harshly to Japan's invasion of China and wanted to take steps to discipline Japan and act against it for its imperialism and its aggression. So he issued an order limiting oil and steel and other exports to Japan. The United States at the time provided Japan with 80% of the world's oil. That limitation ultimately grew to a total embargo, where we cut off oil deliveries to Japan entirely, which forced them to act. Without oil, they couldn't run their navy or army, obviously, so they had to attack somewhere to get access to oil, and they chose Pearl Harbor. We've all known that. But what now comes out is that Roosevelt never intended there to be a total embargo of oil. He issued a partial embargo which limited the amount of oil Japan could get and required that they get special waivers to be able to import that oil. Then when FDR went up to meet with Churchill in the fall of 1941, where they met aboard two American and British ships off Newfoundland, and they visited each other's ship, and the Atlantic Charter was the result of that. This was before the U.S. entered the war. While Roosevelt was away, Achison refused the permits that Japan needed to import the oil, and in effect caused the total oil embargo. When FDR returned and learned about Achison's action, he did not want to reverse it, because that would seem to be appeasing Japan's imperialism. So it stayed in effect, the clock ticked, and Pearl Harbor eventuated. Incredible. The other story about poor old Dean Achison is that when he was Secretary of State under Truman, he gave a speech where he discussed what America's sphere of interest was in Asia. And he said, we have an interest in protecting Asia, protecting Japan. But we do not have a vital national interest in protecting Taiwan or South Korea, but we do in the other parts of Asia. And he said Taiwan and South Korea are protected by the UN Charter, but it's not a vital interest of the United States. At that time, the North Korean leader had flown to Moscow and was meeting with Stalin to ask permission to invade South Korea. And Stalin was not likely to give it to him because he didn't want to get into a war with the United States. But when he read Achison's statement, he took that as a signal that the U.S. would not fight for South Korea. And as a result, he gave North Korea the green light to invade, which they did in June, I think, of 1950, starting the Korean War. Again, Dean Achison did the mischief. Achison was a distinguished Secretary of State under Truman. He wrote the book Present at the Creation that talks about the start of the Cold War, his time at the State Department, and the creation of NATO and the Marshall Plan, for which he deserves a lot of credit. But these two damning stories really are important in diminishing his legacy. We knew about the Korea story, but nobody knew about the oil in Japan story till Beschloss broke it a few weeks ago in his book. Thanks for watching.